Have you ever experienced betrayal on that level? Not just a fleeting mistake or a one-time slip-up, but the kind that completely shakes your world? The kind that makes you question everything. Your decisions, your words, your very reality. It's the kind of thing that sticks with you, even when you think you've moved past it. I'm not writing this for sympathy or to draw attention. I'm sharing it because, maybe like me, some of you need to know you're not losing your mind, and you're definitely not alone. My wife cheated on me, and she did it with this smug look on her face, like I was too dumb to figure it out. But trust me, I figured it out. And when I did, oh, I made sure she regretted it. In the end, I came out on top, and now she's left picking up the pieces of a life she destroyed. Let me tell you about her. She was beautiful. Actually, scratch that, is beautiful. That hasn't changed. She's the kind of woman who knows exactly how to command attention the moment she enters a room. She works as a personal trainer at this upscale gym downtown. The kind of place where people drop more money in a month than I pay in a year. Every day, she'd show up in those tight yoga pants, her body a masterpiece sculpted by years of intense workouts. A flat stomach, toned legs, she loved flaunting it all. And her long hair? It cascaded down her back like she stepped out of a shampoo ad. I can't tell you how many times I watched guys just stop mid-sentence when she walked by. And you know what? She knew it. Oh, she knew it. I lost count of how often I'd catch her sneaking a glance at her reflection, adjusting herself, relishing the attention. When we first met, I was blown away by her looks. I couldn't believe someone like her would ever give me a second glance. But what I didn't see, what I didn't realize, was that under that stunning exterior was a woman who cared only about herself, a woman who could be downright nasty when no one was looking. But I didn't see that side of her until years into our marriage, when it was far too late. See, I run a small business. Nothing fancy, nothing that's going to land me on the cover of a magazine, but it's mine. I built it from the ground up, and it's kept us comfortable. We've got a decent house, 2 cars. Everything you'd expect from a couple in their 30s who've made a good life for themselves. But somewhere along the way, things started to fall apart between us. Maybe it was stress. Maybe we just drifted apart. Honestly, I don't know. All I know is that our relationship started deteriorating. And it wasn't subtle either. The intimacy? What used to be something exciting and passionate slowly turned into something robotic, just going through the motions, checking it off like a chore. Eventually, it got so bad that if I even hinted at it, she'd roll her eyes like I was asking for the impossible. It felt like I was begging for scraps. And let me tell you, no guy wants to feel that way in his own marriage. It's humiliating. And when we weren't ignoring each other, we were fighting over the most ridiculous things. Little stuff, stupid stuff. She'd leave the kitchen a mess, and I'd get pissed. I'd forget to grab milk on the way home, and she'd act like I'd committed the ultimate sin. It was nonstop. There was no peace, no warmth. That spark we once had? Gone. Replaced by a growing wall of resentment. Then there was her phone. She couldn't put it down. She was always on it, scrolling, typing, laughing at things I wasn't a part of. When I asked what was so funny, she'd throw out some vague response like, oh, just something from work. But when you feel something's off, you know, the secrecy, the late-night gym sessions when she was supposedly done for the day, the constant texting, watching all of it was like witnessing the slow death of my marriage. We had a group of friends, you know, the usual grab drinks, go to barbecues, hang out. But there was this one woman in our circle. Let's call her Eva. Eva was different. She had this light about her that didn't need to try. Funny, sharp, caring, a genuinely good person. The kind of woman who listens when you speak, instead of waiting for her turn to talk. I've known Eva for years, way before my wife ever entered the picture. We were always just friends, or so I thought. But if I'm honest, there's always been something more between us, even if we never really talked about it. I've caught her looking at me in a way that made me feel something, and sometimes she'd stand a little too close. You know the type of things I'm talking about, those small moments that only the people involved really notice. But here's the thing, I never acted on it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was trying to be the right kind of guy. I had a wife, a marriage. Or at least, I thought I did. So I buried it all. even though I felt that pull toward Eva. I didn't cross that line, not then. But trust me, Eva plays a much bigger role in this whole mess than either of us realized. Things between my wife and I were crumbling, but I didn't realize just how bad it had gotten until one day I found out about the affair. And let me tell you, that's a story for another time. There's this guy she works with. Let's call him Mark. Classic Gimrat. The guy's all muscles, no brains. He's the type who spends hours flexing in front of a mirror like it's his job. Mark is the kind of guy who'd toss around phrases like bro and gains like he was the next fitness guru, thinking he was hot shit because he could lift more than most. From the moment I met him, I didn't like the guy. It wasn't just his arrogance. It was how he acted around my wife. Too familiar, too comfortable. I could tell something wasn't right. He'd joke around with her, toss his arm around her shoulders like it was no big deal. And there I was, standing there clenching my teeth. She'd always laugh it off, saying something like, "Oh, he's just like that with everyone." But I didn't buy it. There was something off about him, something that didn't sit right with me. My gut told me to keep an eye on him, but I didn't want to seem like that paranoid husband. Maybe that's where I went wrong. I trusted her too much. Anyway, one day started out just like any other. I woke up, went through the motions, kissed my wife goodbye as she headed off to work, and then started my day. Business was busy, same grind as usual. Around lunchtime, I came home to grab something I'd forgotten. She wasn't home yet, and her phone was sitting there on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't even think of checking her phone. I'm not that kind of guy. But that thing kept buzzing like crazy, and something inside me told me to take a look. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe I just didn't want to keep ignoring what I already knew deep down. I picked up the phone, unlocked it. Yeah, I knew her password, and there was a message from him. Mark. And it wasn't about work. No, this was one of those messages that hits you like a punch to the gut before you even finish reading it. He was asking her what time she'd be at their spot. Their spot. I couldn't stop myself from opening the conversation, even though my mind was already spinning. What I saw felt like someone slapped me across the face. It was all there, messages I couldn't ignore. They talked about their plans, the things they'd been doing behind my back. Every word felt like a punch, and I could see the depth of the betrayal in black and white. The lies they told, the things they kept hidden, it was all there for me to see. It was all laid out right in front of me. But what made my blood run cold was seeing what Jason called me, a fool. He mocked me, as if I was too naive to see what was going on, as if my trust in my wife made me weak. He thought he could get away with it, and I could feel the weight of his arrogance in every word. And you know what? The first thing I wanted to do was lose it. I wanted to throw her phone against the wall, storm into that gym, and break that idiot's face. Hell, part of me wanted to kick her out of the house right there, and be done with it. But I didn't. Somehow I kept it together. I stood there gripping the counter, taking deep breaths, trying to clear my head. I knew that if I acted on pure emotion, I'd be giving them exactly what they wanted: drama, chaos, the whole meltdown. No, I needed to handle this smarter. So I set the phone down, took one last deep breath, and made a decision. If she was going to betray me like this, I wasn't just going to sit back and play the victim. I was going to make sure she regretted it. The first thing I did was message Eva. Remember her? The friend I've known for years. The one I've always had that connection with, but never acted on. Yeah, her. I sent her a simple message, nothing too obvious. Just, "Hey, it's been a while. How have you been?" I knew exactly what I was doing. Eva was going to be part of this, whether she realized it or not. She replied pretty quickly, and before long, we were exchanging light-hearted messages, reminiscing about old times and catching up on life. On the surface, it was just a casual conversation, but in the back of my mind, I was already setting the stage. This wasn't just a friendly chat. I had a plan, and I was going to make sure everything fell into place. Because here's the thing, I wasn't just going to confront my wife and that idiot Mark, give them the satisfaction of a big blow-up. That would be too easy for them. No, I was going to make them pay for this in a way they'd never see coming. And Eva? She was going to play a bigger part in this than she even realized. I thought seeing the messages between them was bad enough, but as I read through more, I realized how deep this betrayal really went. It wasn't just the texts or the sneaky after-work meetups. No, they were carrying on right there at the gym, at the same place where she was supposed to be helping people get fit and healthy. The same gym where she'd built her career and reputation. That's where she was sneaking around with that idiot Mark. The more I thought about it, the more disgusted I became. The place where she spent all her time, the place she'd always told me was where her focus was, that's where she was fooling around with him. You'd think they'd be smart enough to keep it out of the workplace. But no, they couldn't wait to get down to business like two teenagers looking for a secret spot to hook up. And then it all started to make sense. She was always staying late at the gym, always coming up with some excuse about extra clients or needing to close up. Yeah, right. She wasn't staying late for work. She was staying late to get in a different kind of workout, one that didn't involve any dumbbells. I wasn't going to let this slide. I needed proof. I needed something that would leave no room for excuses. That's when I remembered the gym had security cameras. Of course, every place like that does. High-end facilities like hers have cameras everywhere. But here's the kicker. No one actually watches those cameras unless something major happens. The staff knows it. And clearly, those two idiots figured they could get away with it. Well, they were wrong. So I waited until the gym closed for the night. I knew there was always a security guard on duty after hours. An old guy who probably didn't care about anything as long as he was getting paid. When I showed up, it wasn't hard to find him. He was sitting at the front desk, barely awake, scrolling through his phone. I could tell he wasn't exactly looking to be a hero, just there for the paycheck. I walked up to him, calm and casual. "Hey, I need a favor," I said, slipping a couple of $100 bills out of my wallet. I saw his eyes light up the second he saw the cash. "I need to see some footage, just from the last couple of weeks." At first, the security guard hesitated. I could see him thinking it through, weighing the risks in his head. Maybe he was wondering if this would come back to bite him. But like I said, money talks. A few $100 was probably more than he made in a week, and he didn't need to know what I was really after. After a quick internal debate, he gave a slow nod. "Just don't say anything to anyone," he said as he handed me the flash drive. No questions asked, no paperwork. Just the footage. I took it from him, thanked him, and headed home, feeling like I was holding a live grenade in my hand. As soon as I got home, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The file was enormous. Hours of footage from every corner of the gym. There was no way I could sit through all of it by myself, especially not in one sitting. After a couple of hours, I barely made a dent. All I'd seen were people doing their routines, lifting weights, chatting at the front desk, stuff that didn't matter. It was too much. I needed a way to narrow it down. That's when I thought of Eva. She was calm, clear-headed, and always had my back, even when I didn't realize I needed it. I shot her a message, trying to keep it light, just a casual, "Hey, do you have time to catch up? I need to talk to you about something." She responded almost immediately, saying she could meet the next day. When we met up, I didn't hold anything back. I told her everything, the messages, the affair, the gym, and the tapes. Her reaction was exactly what I'd expected. Shock, disgust, and a sincere sympathy I'd always admired in her. She put her hand on mine as I spoke, her face full of concern. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "You don't deserve this. Not in a million years." I nodded, grateful for her kindness, but my mind was focused on the next step. I showed her the footage, explaining that it was too much to go through alone, and asked if she could help me find what I was looking for. "Of course," Eva said, without a second's hesitation. "We'll get through this together. I'll help you find it." So we settled in side by side, going through hours of footage. We fast-forwarded through shots of people working out, checking the front desk cameras, looking for any sign of them sneaking around. It was tedious, dull even, but Eva didn't complain. She was patient, methodical, and incredibly supportive in a way I hadn't realized I needed. After what felt like an eternity, we found it. There they were, Mark and my wife, slipping into one of the back rooms. I paused the video, took a long breath, and hit play. I watched them laughing, touching, and then doing exactly what I'd feared. They didn't even bother to check if the camera was running. They were so sure they'd never be caught. And there was every detail in plain sight. Their careless actions, their belief that I'd never find out. The proof was undeniable. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it crushing me. I had the evidence, but what now? How do you even start to process something like that? Eva poured us both a glass of wine, probably sensing how overwhelmed I was. We sat there in silence for a while, the footage still playing, but I wasn't really watching anymore. When it was time to leave, I felt numb. I hugged her goodbye. It was supposed to be a friendly hug, but Eva held on just a little longer, her arms around me in a way that wasn't just polite. It was comforting. It felt like she understood exactly what I was going through without me needing to say a word. After a moment, I pulled back, thanking her again. "I don't know what I'd do without you," I said, and I meant it. She smiled, but there was something sad behind her eyes. "I'll always be here for you," she said. I nodded, then headed home, my mind a whirl of thoughts. I had the proof. I had Eva's support, but I still had to keep up the act a little longer. I had to be the clueless husband, the fool she thought I was. Timing was everything, and when I made my move, it was going to be exactly the way I wanted it. After I had that footage, I knew I couldn't sit on it for long. There was no point in pretending everything was fine when it was so clearly not. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became, not just at her, but at myself. How had I let it go on this long? How could I not see the signs earlier? I didn't want to confront her in private. No, she deserved to be exposed. Exposed in front of everyone she thought she could deceive. So I came up with a plan. I suggested we throw a party for one of our mutual friends. She was all for it. Of course, she loved being the center of attention, the one running the show. It was the perfect opportunity. When the night of the party came, everything was set. The house was packed with friends, laughter filling the air, drinks flowing freely. And there she was, acting like nothing was wrong, chatting, smiling, as if everything was normal, completely unaware that I was holding the proof right in my hands. It took every ounce of willpower not to confront her then and there. But I had a plan, and I was going to execute it. Once everyone had settled in, I grabbed the remote and stood in front of the TV. "Hey, everyone, I've got something to show you." I tried to sound casual, like this was just another routine moment. She gave me that look, probably expecting I was about to put on some goofy video or some highlights from a game. But when I hit play and the footage from the gym started rolling, the room went dead silent. At first, there was confusion on their faces, like they didn't understand what they were looking at. But as the image cleared, her and Mark sneaking into the back room, the realization hit. Gasps filled the air, whispers spread, and I heard the sound of drinks being set down with a soft thud. She just stood there frozen, her face drained of color as she watched herself on the screen, caught red-handed. People started speaking out. One friend muttered, "Jesus Christ," while another, always so adamant about morals, sneered, "That's disgusting." Others just went quiet, awkwardly avoiding eye contact with her, clearly uncomfortable. The room felt like a pressure cooker, everyone waiting for the inevitable fallout. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The proof was right there. They all saw it, and I knew, in that moment, that none of them would ever look at her the same way again. Her perfect image shattered, her lies laid bare, and our marriage, well, it was done. Without a word, I walked out of the house. I didn't need to hear her excuses, or her tears, or whatever manipulation she was planning. I wasn't sticking around for that. I just needed air. I needed to clear my head. So I walked, no destination in mind, just moving through the neighborhood, hands shoved in my pockets, thoughts swirling around everything that had just gone down. I felt anger, sure, but more than that, I felt stupid. How had I let this happen? How could I have ignored all the warning signs? I wasn't some innocent bystander in this mess. I had seen the signs, but I'd chosen to ignore them. I'd convinced myself things would get better. All the while, I'd been played for a fool. That's when I heard a car pull up beside me. I glanced over and saw Eva behind the wheel. She rolled down the window and called out, "Want to go for a ride?" I didn't hesitate. I just nodded and got in. We drove in silence for a while. Neither of us said a word, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was one of those silences that didn't need to be filled. She knew exactly what had happened. She had been at the party. She'd seen the video. There was nothing more to say. Eventually, she drove us out to this spot on the edge of town. It was quiet, hidden away on a hill overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like a sea of stars, and the air was cool and still. It was beautiful, peaceful, a sharp contrast to the chaos I'd just left behind. She got out of the car and popped open the trunk, pulling out a blanket. "I come here sometimes," she said softly, spreading the blanket across the ground. "It's a good place to think." We sat down together side by side and started talking, really talking, about my marriage, about how long she'd known something was off, about how she felt about me. I realized as we spoke that I hadn't felt this comfortable with anyone in a long time. There was no pressure, no judgment, just her. It felt like I could finally breathe. At some point, she turned to me and hugged me. Not just a quick, friendly hug, but a real deep embrace. And I hugged her back, feeling like for the first time in ages, I wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But then I pulled back. It was awkward, uncertain. I mumbled, half to her, half to myself. "I'm still married." She looked at me, her eyes soft but steady. "Do you still consider it a marriage?" she asked, her voice gentle, but cutting right to the heart of it. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew the truth. I just nodded slowly, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It wasn't planned, but it felt right, right there under the night sky, with the city lights twinkling below us. On that quiet hill, we made love. It wasn't just about the physical part, though that was incredible. It was the connection, the closeness, the feeling of being wanted and understood in a way I hadn't felt in years. Afterward, we drove back to her place. I wasn't ready to go home. Not yet. We spent the night together, and when we got there, we did it again. It was like a dam had broken. All the pent-up emotions, all the frustrations spilling out in those few hours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. In that moment, I knew things would never be the same again. Not with my wife. Not with Eva. Not with me. The next morning, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. As much as the night with Eva had been a turning point, I still had to face the wreckage I'd left at home. My wife had been exposed, humiliated, and I knew she wasn't going to take it lying down. There was no avoiding the conversation that awaited me. I had to talk to her about the divorce, about everything that had gone down. When I walked in, she was already waiting for me. The moment I stepped through the door, the atmosphere was thick with tension. She didn't waste any time. "You ruined everything, you idiot," she screamed, her face twisted with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stood there for a moment, letting her words wash over me. Honestly, I'd been expecting this. She wasn't the type to go down without a fight. And now that her secret was out, she was cornered, lashing out at anyone within reach. "I didn't ruin anything," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You did that all by yourself." Of course, we argued. She threw insult after insult, calling me an idiot, accusing me of embarrassing her in front of everyone, and warning that I'd be in trouble for what I'd done. But I didn't back down. I wasn't going to let her flip this on me. "This is on you," I said, my voice steady. "I want a divorce," I told her. The words came out flat, like they were just a simple fact. But it hit her harder than I expected. For a moment, she looked like she might lose it, like she was going to snap, but then she took a deep breath. Her face changed, her anger turning into something cold, venomous. "Fine," she spat. "You'll get your divorce. If you want out, you've got it." That was it. I left the house after that, needing some space to breathe, to think. It wasn't until later that I realized just how far she'd go to make things difficult for me. One day, while I was out running errands for the business, something happened that I definitely didn't see coming. I was walking back to my car, minding my own business, when I spotted one of her colleagues. Another gym guy, not Mark, but a guy who looked like he was built to crush concrete. He was standing across the street, and I could tell he was watching me, waiting. The moment I even considered turning around or getting out of there, he was on me. I didn't stand a chance. Even if he had given me a heads up, it wouldn't have mattered. This guy was built for pain, and I didn't even see the punch coming. The first hit dropped me, my head spinning, and then the blows started coming fast and hard. I remember hearing the sickening crack of my ribs as his fist slammed into me. The next thing I knew, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. There was a nurse by my side, adjusting some of the machines hooked up to me, and across the room, I noticed an officer waiting. As soon as I was alert enough, he came over and started asking questions. My head was foggy, and I couldn't piece everything together right away. It was all a blur of pain and confusion, but slowly, the details started to come back. The attack, the guy's face. I told the officer everything I could. I spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital, recovering from a concussion and a broken rib. 2 weeks of lying there, replaying everything over and over in my head, trying to understand what had led to this. I knew it had something to do with my wife. There was no other reason this guy would come after me like that. She had to have said something. Told him I was causing trouble, getting people stirred up. After those 2 weeks, the officer came back, asking if I could identify the guy. And hell yes, I could. I'll never forget his face. I pointed him out in the lineup without hesitation. He looked back at me with this smug, challenging expression, like he thought he could intimidate me through that glass. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was pissed. The guy got sentenced to 3 years. 3 years for assaulting me without warning, for trying to take me down because of whatever loyalty or lies he believed in. I don't know if my wife was involved in it directly, but by that point, I didn't care. The damage was done, and he was the one who paid the price. As for me, those weeks in the hospital gave me the space I needed, time to think, to plan, to figure out how I was going to close this chapter once and for all. The divorce process was as messy as anyone would expect, but honestly, after everything that had already happened, it felt more like a formality. My marriage had ended long before I filed the paperwork. By the time I walked into the courtroom, it felt like I was just tying up loose ends, cleaning up the wreckage of a life that no longer felt like mine. Of course, my wife, well, my ex-wife now, didn't make it easy. She tried to drag things out, stir up drama in court, but the truth was she didn't have much to stand on. We didn't have kids, which was a small blessing in all of this, and our finances were mostly separate. Thanks to my business being mine alone, she couldn't touch it, and I made damn sure of that. Still, she made plenty of noise. She blamed me for everything, said I humiliated her in front of all our friends and ruined her reputation. I couldn't help but laugh. Her reputation? She was the one who'd been sneaking around behind my back with another guy, in public no less, and somehow I was the one to blame. The absurdity of it hit me like a slap in the face. But that's how people like her operate, isn't it? They twist things to make you feel like you're the one who's lost it, like you're the one who's in the wrong. But I didn't fall for it. I just let her rant, let her accuse me of being petty, of ruining everything. I knew the truth, and so did everyone who mattered. In the end, the divorce went through, and she walked away with nothing but guilt and the shattered pieces of her life. I walked away with the house, my business, and most importantly, my freedom, and that was more than enough for me. Through it all, Eva was a constant. We hadn't put any labels on our relationship. Hell, after everything I'd been through, I wasn't even sure what I wanted or needed. But Eva? She was steady. She didn't try to control or manipulate. She was just herself, and that was all I really needed. We spent more and more time together as the divorce progressed. It started off simple. Dinners at her place, movie nights, late-night talks about everything that had gone wrong in my life. But as time passed, something deeper started to form between us. I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone in years. She never pushed me to share. She didn't pry. She just listened. And for once, it felt like someone genuinely cared about me, without expecting anything in return. By the time the divorce was finalized, I realized that Eva wasn't just a support system in tough times. She was someone I could see a future with. She had been there for me when it felt like the world was falling apart, and she didn't ask for anything in exchange. We didn't rush into anything, though. After all that had happened, I was taking things one step at a time, letting things unfold naturally. I wasn't looking to force anything. I was just grateful for the peace and clarity she brought into my life. As for my friends, man, I can't even put into words how much I owe them. When I was stuck in that hospital bed, they showed up. Even the ones I hadn't seen in a while came to visit, cracking jokes, bringing takeout because hospital food is a joke, just keeping me grounded so I didn't lose my mind. Each of them contributed something. Some gave me advice, others just made me laugh. But every single one of them played a part in keeping me sane. One of my closest friends even said, "We all thought she was bad news, man. We just didn't know how to say it." At first, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Why didn't anyone speak up sooner? But then I realized it wouldn't have mattered. I was too far gone, too blinded by the idea of who I thought my wife was. I wouldn't have listened. But they were there for me anyway, even after everything had crumbled. That's what real friendship is. No judgments. No, I told you so's. Just support. And after going through all that betrayal, having people in my corner like that meant more to me than I could ever express. Lying there in that hospital bed, surrounded by my friends with Eva by my side, I realized how lucky I was. Sure, I'd been through hell, but I came out of it with something more valuable. People who genuinely cared. It wasn't about money or status. It was about authentic connections, and that's something no amount of success or material things could ever replace. The divorce dragged on for months, but when it was finally over, I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. It was done. That chapter was closed, and I was finally free to move on, to rebuild, to start fresh. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone drag me back down. Looking back, I know I made mistakes. I ignored red flags. I trusted the wrong person. But that's life, right? You live, you learn, and if you're lucky, you come out of it stronger. To anyone reading this, thank you. Honestly, writing this all down, sharing my story with you, has helped me process everything in ways I didn't expect. If even one person reads this and learns something from my experience, then it's been worth it. Take care of yourselves. Pay attention to the people around you. Don't let anyone treat you less than you deserve. And above all, trust your instincts. They're there for a reason. Good luck.